Hello, everybody. I see some folks are still coming in, so I'm going to give us just one more second to let everybody get settled, and then we will kick ourselves off here. All right, I am going to get started. I don't want to waste any time. We have a short window and a very wonderful presentation planned for today. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Kim Fredken. I am a fractional marketer here at Lettuce. I lead our brand and our content, and we're so excited to have you here today. A couple of housekeeping notes just in terms of session format. So this is a 40-minute session, and we're gonna try to get you out right on time, which gives everybody about 10 minutes for a quick refresh before our next piece of content starts. As Melisa presents, feel free to use the chat. There's also a Q&A. And if you see a question from somebody else that you're interested in, give it a +1 or a like. That'll help us prioritize it in the Q&A time that we have. We're gonna, for the most part, hold questions for the end. We're gonna try to leave 5 minutes for us to ask Melisa what's most on our mind. So without further delay, it is time to learn how to double our revenue. To guide us through this lesson that I'm sure everybody needs to hear is Melisa Lieberman. So Melisa has built an impressive career helping independent consultants create sustainable and profitable businesses. She has over a decade of experience as an independent consultant herself, and she brings a really unique insight from both sides of the table. Before being a consultant, before she launched her coaching practice, she led a $250 million global consulting practice at a major software company and served as a consultant for Accenture. She's the host of Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast and the author of Grow Your Consulting Business, a 14-step roadmap to make your independent consulting goals a reality. So as someone who has helped countless consultants break through revenue plateaus and build predictable pipelines, she really knows what it takes to scale consulting businesses strategically. So that was a long warm up, but we are very happy to welcome Melisa. Melisa, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the opportunity to be here as part of this solo summit. And today I'm excited to talk with you about the 4 steps to double your revenue, whether you have a consulting business, a freelance business, or any other type of business that you're running as a solo entrepreneur and business owner. Today, I want to help you to get to the place where you can double your revenue. So without belaboring the introduction, I thought I would start off and just give you the answer. What are the 4 steps? And then we'll dive into each one of them in detail. The 4 steps to double your revenue are: number 1, doubling the value that you're offering to your clients. We'll talk about what that actually means. Doubling your demand. We'll talk about more on what that means. Doubling the value to your business. And then doubling who you're being. So some of these might sound a little bit vague, but we'll dive into them in detail on each one of them. And then we'll wrap up with next steps and Q&A. So that's what we're here to talk about. I will be using a lot of consulting examples today because that's the world I work in and live in and am so passionate about. But think about it if you're not a consultant, maybe you're a freelancer or another type of business owner of one, really be thinking about how does this apply to you, even if the examples aren't exactly relevant to the type of business that you're running. As I was building this, I thought about all the different types of examples of businesses of one that we're all running, and want to make this relevant to everyone here. All right. So with that, before we dive in, I think this might also be somewhere in the tool here, but I wanted to give you, a lot of times we wait till the end to give you a gift. I wanted to give it to you at the very beginning in case you have to jump off or something like that, which is a PDF copy of my book, an electronic copy of my book. You can download it at melisabook.com. And again, even if you're not a consultant, these 14 steps are very relevant to running a business and growing a business, and hopefully a good complement to what we're just kind of touching the surface of today. So go download if you feel it would be valuable for you. Okay, so now let's talk about just taking a moment. I always love to take a moment at the beginning of these types of events and ask you, what do you want to take away? If you want to share it in the chat, that would be phenomenal. I'll keep my eye over there and try to make content relevant to what you're thinking about in the real time. But I also like to remind you that you've taken the this time that we have available today, and also the next 2 days of the Solo Summit, these are an investment for you in your business and in yourself. So what do you want to take away today? Why are you here? How can this be a good return on the investment of your time? Answer for yourself, what does doubled mean for you? It might be easy to answer financially what is doubled. Maybe you're making 250 right now and you want to move up to 500. But it can also be something about your schedule. Maybe you want to be generating double what you're making and also working half the time. Maybe you want to double something emotionally where you're feeling more joy, double the amount of joy, and half the amount of disappointment or challenges or frustration in your business. Whatever it means for you, getting really clear for yourself as we go through this will be really important. As an example, you might say to yourself, I will generate 500K in revenue by the end of this year. I'll do it working 4 days per week and 44 days per week and 44 weeks of the year and feeling more fulfilled and balanced. That might be your definition of doubled. So put that down for yourself. We've already got a few of those examples in the comments. All right. The first thing I think is really important before we start going through the 4 steps of doubling your revenue is to really understand what might be standing in your way of making more money. A lot of times we think it might be the economy or the market or time constraints. Maybe you think I'm already maxed out in the time that I'm spending. I couldn't possibly make more money because I don't have any more time. Or you might think it's your website's problem or that you're not good at sales. So a lot of times we attribute these external things to the reason why we might not be where we're at want to be or where we might want to get to from a doubling perspective. What I want to say to you today is that it's not these external factors. It's actually you. It's the way you're thinking and executing on your business. And this might sound harsh. It might sound harsh. It might sound harsh for sure. But the fact is that it's actually the best news, because when it's on you, it's fully in your control to double your business and beyond without needing to work more. It's not a limitation of the market. It's not a limitation. It doesn't have to be a limitation of the market. It doesn't have to be a limitation of what you offer or how you offer it. You have the ability, and this is fully in your control, to double your business. And that's why it's good news that it's if we were to say it in the most direct way, it's your fault that you're where you're at right now, which means you have the full control over bringing it to where you want to go. So that's the first thing that I want to say to set the stage here, that you have the ability to do this. And we want to dive into those 4 steps to help you make it happen. All of us are getting in our own way. I've been doing this for 12 years, almost 13 now, as an independent consultant, running my own consulting business, coaching other independent consultants. I talk to somewhere between 4 and 8 consultants every day, whether it's networking or working with clients. This is what I live and breathe. I can assure you that all of us are in our own way in some form or fashion. In fact, I have my own coach for this exact reason, right? We're all in our own way and like I said, that's the best news. So today we want to really dive into how do we drive into helping you think about your business in a different way to unlock other options for you to be pursuing to not only double the revenue in your business, but do it without having to sacrifice how much you're working. You could be working less. You could be offering things that you enjoy delivering at a higher level. We want to be really revisiting all of the aspects of your business to help you get to this place where you're doubling your revenue without sacrificing some other goal. So the 4 steps that we're going to dive into one by one are: number 1, what is the value that you're offering to your client and the way that you're thinking about that? Then we'll talk about how to double the value of the demand, double your demand. How do you generate more demand? How do you double your pipeline, for example? Then we'll talk about how to double the value to your business and what that means. And then we'll wrap up with the doubling of who you're being, how you're thinking. So let's start with the first one, the value to your clients. This is really important because money comes from value. What you're paying what someone is paying you, what a client is willing to pay you, a lot of times we think, well, that's just driven by the market. Of course, that's a consideration. But if you think about simple things like iPhones, for example, that are over $1,000, is that really the cost of the iPhone, and what we pay for it is very different, right? And so when we think about that type of thing, we pay for it because we want the outcomes that it creates for us. It gives us connectivity. It gives us ability to stay in touch with our family members. It gives us all of these different features and functions that we value. We pay $1,000 for it, where you could say the actual raw materials of the thing are, I don't know what the actual cost is, but maybe $20, right? So when we think about where the money comes from, why people are paying you, why your clients are paying you, and what they're willing to pay you, it comes from ultimately the value that you're delivering to those clients and the outcomes that they're looking for. And so when you start thinking about how do I double my revenue, one of the important components is getting to the place where you think about doubling the value. Doubling the value, that the perceived value of that client, sometimes the quantified value for those your types of clients, and really revisiting what it is you're offering and why you're offering it and why your clients care about it. So let me give you some examples of questions you might be asking yourself and just revisiting. These are the types of concepts that as a business owner, you want to be revisiting frequently. Oftentimes we get kind of down in the weeds of delivery and trying to juggle running our business and marketing and sales for our business. And we deprioritize or we defer that important thinking time. And for you, the thinking time may be answering the questions such as, what do your clients want to achieve? And a lot of times we think on the surface, well, they need, let's say you're a website developer, they need a new website, or maybe you're a consultant who does project management, they need a project manager, or maybe you're a management consultant and you say, well, they need a strategy. Those are the actual functions of, the features, if you will, of what they need. But at the end of the day, why do they need that? What is the point of having a new website? What is the point of having a strategy roadmap? What does that actually get them? What are they trying to achieve? And taking this down into many more layers than what you might be used to taking it down to, so that you can truly understand what are the business drivers for your clients. What do they care about? Why do they care about it? How do they think about the value attached to what it is that you're delivering? How do they quantify from a qualitative and quantitative perspective the outcomes that you're creating? And in what ways could you double the value that you deliver? I love the idea of, sitting down several times a year and thinking, okay, if I was delivering double the value to my clients, what would that look like? You might ask yourself, let's say that you've got a service that is a 10K service. You might say to yourself, okay, I want this to be a 20K service. Why would a client value that outcome in a different way that would represent the 20K in value to them, or even beyond? Really revisiting what you're offering to your clients and why they might value it and how they may be thinking about the value, so that way you've got that really strong foundation from which then to, ultimately potentially offer different things to your clients, different types of services or outcomes, to price what you're doing differently, to think about the way you're delivering to clients, perhaps in a more scalable way or in a different way. But it all starts with you thinking about how could I double the value to my clients? That's the first step here. The 5 obstacles that you want to be looking out for when you start thinking about doubling the value. Sometimes we think about what we offer from an employee perspective still. So for example, let's say that you're a fractional consultant of some sort, and you are offering, fractional services and working with multiple clients at one given time. You might think about, well, what would a client if you're giving 2 days to a client, let's say, what would a client typically pay for an executive at this level, or another type of resource that's similar to you if you were a full-time employee? And then you start thinking about how would you price it in a way that's either equal to or maybe even a little bit less than what they would pay a full-time employee, because you're thinking about it from an employee perspective. You want to start shifting out of that and thinking about what is the value to the client? Why is having a fraction of your time so much more valuable to that client than them having that full-time employee? Really getting yourself out of that mindset as an employee and into a business owner mindset. The other blocker that I often see is enabling a potential client to think it's similar to hiring an employee. You want to be crafting your process, your marketing process, your sales process in a way that helps them to understand and see that whatever it is that you're offering is very different than them hiring you as an employee, that they're hiring you for outcomes and results rather than an FTE. You also want to be watching out for, a lot of times we think to ourselves, we're not worth double the value, or what we're offering isn't double the value. And we kind of shut ourselves down and start looking for ways it's not as valuable as what it could be. For example, you might be asking yourself, well, how is this not worth double the value? And I just encourage you that's not a great, we answer questions in the very literal way we ask ourselves. That's how our mind works. So if you're asking yourself, how is this not worth double the value? You're going to get the answer to that question. We don't want the answer to that question. We want the answer to the question of, how is this worth double or even more than double the value? And then unlocking that idea of thinking that providing more value takes more time. Revisiting that and thinking to yourself about, how could I add more value and take less time adding the value? And then finally, thinking your clients won't pay more. I can't tell you how many times I hear from consultants justifying to me and freelancers and others justifying to me, oh, they won't pay more. This is just how the market works, Melisa. If you want to argue for your limitations, that's your choice, but we don't want you to be limited anymore. And so really noticing where it might feel like you just, sharing the news, sharing just how it works, it might feel very true to you, but getting to the place where you can really revisit those assumptions and look at it in a different way to figure out, how is it possible for you to, perhaps maybe most people are operating in the way that the way the world works. How can you operate differently? Okay, let's move on to the second component of doubling your revenue, which is doubling demand. Doubling your demand. For example, doubling the value of your pipeline. The way that you want to be thinking about this to start with is doubling your demand often starts with the lead source. Where are the leads coming from? And what is the value and quality of your leads? As you're thinking about the value of your pipeline. So for example, this is some consulting examples here. But you might want to be thinking about, are you dependent right now? Are you dependent on other people sending you leads? Maybe you're dependent on word of mouth or recruiters or marketplaces. Maybe you're dependent on leads from those sources. It's not a problem. Listen, I think I stayed in this zone for 4 or 5 years until I started figuring out what I was doing. I made so many mistakes. I still make tons of mistakes, but at the very beginning, it was staying here stuck for so long. I didn't even realize what I was doing, that I was stuck here and under earning as a result of it. From there, you want to be starting to think about doubling the demand by getting to the place where you're sought after, where you've got a reputation for what you do, where you've got more demand than supply, where you're able to drive leads in a way that's more scalable, perhaps than pounding the pavement, and where you are really known for a very clear specialization or set of problems that you solve, and creating that type of inbound opportunity for yourself. So as you think about driving the doubling the value of your demand and therefore your revenue, you want to be thinking about your lead source and asking yourself questions about how do I become known for and sought after for what I do as as a consultant or a business owner. And so that might look like this matrix that I'll share with you here, which is really thinking about your demand from a couple of different dimensions. The first is your positioning. How are you coming across to your prospects? Are you coming across some of us come across in a more tactical way, or maybe you think you're just learning, maybe your business is newer. Although I hear this sometimes from people who have been in business for 20 years. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm still, I'm waiting for referrals and word of mouth because that's what's been working for me, versus a double demand mindset and approach is where you're positioning yourself in a more strategic way, in a more expertly way, in a more value-driven way. One of the ways I like to think about this is oftentimes when we're working with clients, sometimes they may be clients that we had worked with in the past when we were in corporate. And a lot of times we think about ourselves, how do we kind of stack up to where they're at in the corporate hierarchy? Maybe they have a VP title or a C-level title or even a director level title. And we're just mentally trained to think about ourselves with respect to those types of org structures. And so we think that we're subordinate to them, even though we're a business owner and we're interacting with them in a different context. And so from that perspective, you want to be going in thinking about yourself and positioning yourself in your own mind that you're a peer to your client, not a subordinate to your client. Then you want to, another aspect of this doubling your demand is thinking about your offers. Is what you're offering worth 2x to your ideal clients based on outcomes like we were talking about a minute ago? And then finally, when you think about lead gen and sales, getting more clear about why the client needs your help. Are you reacting to requests and kind of hustling, or do you have a system that generates and closes high quality clients for yourself based on that continuum that I just shared with you? So when you think about doubling your demand and the value of your pipeline, as we wrap up this segment and move on to the third one, you want to be noticing the blockers that might be preventing you from doubling your demand. It may be that you're inconsistent with lead generation. It might be that it's so common for us to, especially as solo business owners, to go out and work on business development, and then we land a client, and then we stop, and then we work on the delivery, and then we start back up again. You are a business owner. Your job as a CEO of your business is to make sure that you are generating demand for your services and for your offerings. And that doesn't stop. That never stops, even if you're fully utilized. Instead of trying to start and stop what you're doing because you're worried about you not having capacity to deliver, you want to solve the problem by figuring out, what am I going to do when I have excess demand? And solving that problem rather than trying to throttle your demand to match up with whatever your capacity is. Also, the other obstacles are very mental, right? So we are slowed down by fear and self-doubt and second guessing and thinking the demand is out of our control. I want to go back to what we started with, which is the market is bad, or all of those reasons why we might say to ourselves, well, my pipeline is weak, but that's just how it is right now. This is in your control. You need to make it into your control if you want to double your revenue and hit your goals this year. And so asking yourself, how can this be in my control? How can I better control this, rather than finding all the reasons why it might be out of your control? Okay, giving you some hard coaching today. Hopefully you'll take it and run with it. Let's move on to the third one, which is the value to your business, doubling the value to your business. Ultimately, your time is your business inventory. So you want to be intentionally deciding how you allocate your time. Now, let me just caution here. I'm not talking about charging by the hour. That's not what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about is ultimately your time as a solo consultant or business owner, freelancer. Your time ultimately is your business inventory. And so when you want to think about doubling your revenue, one of the other components of this is, how do you double the value of your time without working more? For example, you might be asking yourself, what types of work do you want to be offering? Right now, you might be doing some more tactical type of work. How do you up level that into perhaps some strategy type work or advisory type work, or work where you're able to sell it and have other people deliver it, as subcontractors, for example? What are you charging? So many of us are undercharging because we are stuck with charging by the hour, or worried about losing clients because we're charging too much. And so we end up negotiating with ourselves and undercharging. So really thinking about, what is the value of my time? If you have some simple math you could do here, which is, what is your revenue goal for the year? How much availability do you have, either, if you're the person delivering or if you've got others helping you, and really figuring out what is the ultimate value of your time, versus so many of us build up our pricing based on guesses about, oh, what do I think they'll accept, or what do I think that the client will be willing to pay, or what do I think the client's budget is? And then we just consistently, what do I think other people might be charging? Maybe I'll charge a little bit less than that and hope I can land more clients and get a foothold in the market. Whatever it is, however you're thinking about your prices, really looking at it from that other vantage point, which is, for you, the doubling the value of the time that you're spending, and then figuring out your pricing and figuring out what types of client problems are you solving that are really commensurate with that type of pricing, rather than constantly trying to figure out how to make it work with whatever you assume the client would be willing to pay. That's what we want to be thinking about when you're looking at doubling the value of your time without working more. Let me give you some very tangible examples. Again, these are consulting examples, so put in place whatever makes sense for your own scenario of whatever you're selling. But let me give you some examples, hard and fast examples, for you to walk away from today's call with. These are real life examples of what it might look like to double your revenue from 100 to 200, or 250 to 5, or 5 to a million, as an example. So from 100 to 200 can be fairly straightforward, not easy, but straightforward, from the sense of, maybe you're still charging by the hour. You could double your bill rate from 100 to 200 per hour. That gets you to an extra 100K. You could sell 5 strategy projects, which is 100K at 20K each. You could add 2 5K per month retainer clients, which adds another 120. So looking at, what might it actually look like tangibly to double from 100 to a 200? Another example for you, to get from 250 to 500, this consultant, again, real life examples, they did a couple of things that added up to 276 in additional revenue. Number one, they increased their current pricing by 30%. Of course, it requires those other the other components we've been talking about today, right? You want to be thinking about, how is this valuable to the client? How is this valuable, and how does it fit into your overall business model? They also sold 7 15K assessments and 1 8K per month retainer client. That got them to an additional 276,000, which was double their initial revenue. And then finally, the 500K to a million, they increased their pricing by 20%. They sold 125K assessment, and then 3 additional retainer clients at 360. That got them an additional over $500,000. You want to be thinking about, what does that mean tangibly for you, in terms of what it is you're selling, why it's valuable to your end clients, and how it fits into your overall business model, without sort of suppressing yourself of, well, this isn't possible, or no one will buy this, or what if I do this and I lose a bunch of clients, and all of that fear that always, that our brain is trained as a human being to interject so that you'll keep the status quo in place. When you make this more tangible for yourself, and you could sit down and just write out a bunch of different examples of, without judging. It's like a brainstorming exercise, right? We always say, when we brainstorm, no idea is a bad idea. Sit down and figure out for yourself, what would it look like to double, when you're thinking about what you're offering, how you're offering it, and what the pricing would look like for you to get to the place that you want to be. the blockers in terms of doubled inventory, pricing based on time. You won't be able to get to a place. You may be able, especially in the beginning, from that 100 to 200, you could more easily get to the place where you've doubled your revenue and still charge based on time, but then you hit a ceiling, obviously. So you want to be thinking about, how do you decouple what you're doing from the amount of time that you're spending, and shifting the value and the offers and the problems you solve, so that those two things are not tied together. You also want to be realizing when you, as you're thinking about your business strategy and how you want to be shifting it, you want to recognize where you might be assuming you are going to have to work more to earn more. It's like prevalent throughout our mindset. And so noticing that for yourself will be really important. And then finally, worrying that specialization or changing the business model in some way, even changing your pricing, for example, will leave money on the table. It will leave money on the table. For sure, you'll leave money on the table. There's never a time in business where you don't leave money on the table, in the sense of perhaps you end up not being the freelancer or consultant for a certain type of client anymore. But you want to be focused on the type of money you do want to be earning and the type of nature of services you do want to be offering, and not worrying about what you might be losing as a result of that. Okay, let's wrap up these 4 steps and then we'll have Q&A with the doubling of who you're being. And this one is a little bit less tangible, but if I had to pick any of these 3 for you to, if I said there's just one step to double your revenue, this is really encapsulates all of it. Let me tell you what I mean by this. Ultimately, the results in your business have to do with the way that you're thinking. They have to do with the way that what you think is possible for yourself. They have to do with what you think you believe the market will support. It has to do with what you think your clients will value and not value. It has to do with what you believe, what you're offering, and what you think the value of that is that you're offering, and what courage you have to even go out there and offer what you're offering, and being able to overcome the fear of rejection and the fear of failure and the self-doubt that comes with, being a business owner. So when you think about doubling who you're being, you want to think about, how do you double the way that you're thinking about yourself and the market? Let me give you some examples. If you were in this zone from 0 in revenue to 200K in revenue, a lot of times we have these thought processes of, I'm just a website designer. I'm just a project manager. I'm just a marketing consultant. I don't have a niche, for example. You might be thinking some form of, I'm just a. And you might also be thinking, I'm not good at business development. I hate business development. I hear these things so often. I can assure you that someone who's making $1 million is not thinking in the same way. They might not love business development, but they're not thinking they're bad at it. They're not thinking that they hate it. They might think they don't love it. But again, they're not thinking about their business or themselves in this way. Someone who has reached this $1 million level thinks about things in a different way. That's why they have the results that they have. You want to get to the place where you're thinking about these things and your business and yourself at the level that you want to reach before you reach it, in order to reach it. You don't wait for permission to have reached $1 million when you start thinking of yourself in order to start thinking of yourself this way. It's a simple chicken and the egg scenario. You want to be thinking as much, let's say you have $1 million goal. You want to be thinking about yourself, about your business from that vantage point of $1 million as much as you can, in problem solving and positioning yourself and setting up offers in a way that helps you to think that way, operate that way, come across that way, be more confident in that way in order to create the $1 million. So that's why as I said, if I had to pick one, that's why this one is the most essential, most important, because ultimately everything is driven from this. The way you think about the value to your business, the value to yourself, the value to your clients, and how to double your pipeline. But you want to be watching out for almost ready for Q&A, Kim. You want to be watching out for the upper limit. This is a book by Hendricks. You might go grab it. The Big Leap. It is something that's so important to be noticing where you've got your upper limit. If I earn more, it will be hard to sustain it. If I earn more, am I worth it? Who am I to? If I make more money, I'll outgrow, the business that I've got. Really looking at whatever that internal talk track is that is keeping you where you're at. Number one, noticing it. And then number two, figuring out and rebuilding your self-identity and the way you're thinking of yourself in order to achieve the goals that you're setting. All right. So pulling this all together, you want to be taking these 4 steps to double your revenue. Honestly, if you nailed all 4 of these, you would probably quadruple your revenue. So really thinking about what is the value to your clients? How can you double your demand? How can you double the value of the work that you're doing for your business and the way you're using your capacity? And then how are you doubling who you're being? So as we wrap up and have a few minutes for Q&A, I'll just leave this here. It's different links to resources that might be valuable to you, including a QR code that has a whole link tree with it. So Kim, over to you.
Yes, great. Thank you. I would not want to interrupt that. That was, we were all nodding along. I could see in the chat, you were getting lots of head nods and agreements. And this was an awesome reframe in so many ways. So thank you for that. Guys, I'm going to put a couple offers up here. Melisa has just talked through her offer. She has amazing resources on her site and, of course, a book for us all to go get. I'm also going to put up here, let's see if it comes in the way I hope it will. For Lettuce, there's an offer. If you use the code SOLOVIP and you're interested in learning more about Lettuce or becoming a customer, you get 1 free month. And if you're still figuring out how you're going to get your 2024 tax returns in, we can help you with that as well. If you come to us by March 15th. So there is one offer. The other thing I'm going to put up for you guys is, these sessions are really just the start. This is where we do the learning and we get the insights. And the next piece is really putting it into action. So following this summit, Lettuce is doing a solo challenge where every day for 30 days, we're going to be sending out little action items that everybody can take to keep moving themselves forward with more tools and resources and tips from Melisa and some of our other great speakers. And so look for that to come your way. That's all I have from me for the Q&A. It looks like we have one question in here that is getting some love, so I want to start with that. And it's really about how to shift from a time-based model to a outcomes-based model. And especially when you're in the onset of a relationship, how do you assess what those outcomes could be? There's so many variables. I'll read it quickly if you haven't yet, Melisa. It's from Kim. She's a fractional CMO. And right now she uses time comparison as a way to manage her clients' expectations of how she's going to plug in day-to-day activities, 10, 20, 30% of her time. She's attempting to transition to outcomes instead of a time-based model, but can be hard to assess the possibility of what can actually be done. How do you understand the barriers, challenges, and opportunities so early to be able to give an outcome?
Yeah, this is an excellent question and probably could be its own presentation, honestly. But I think that a starting point that I might recommend is, especially when we get to the place where we're ready to start shifting from hourly based pricing to an outcome based pricing. One of the I always like to help consultants and freelancers take a mini step. And that mini step could be, it may be a big leap from where you're at right now to being able to scope out in a way that you've just described in the question. And so one mini step to get there may be looking at a shorter term engagement where you're doing just, for example, a marketing strategy or roadmap. And so you've got more containment around what that might look like. And then it gives you the ability to do 2 things. Number one, get paid for scoping out at a more granular level. And then secondarily, gives you all of those insights that you were just listing out in the question about the unknowns. Gives you that ability to look behind the scenes and get those questions answered so that then you can build out a retainer, for example, and price that out for your client. But in a way, figuring out how to position it so that it has nothing to do with time. It has to do with the outcomes that the client is looking for and the value that they're wanting to achieve.
You guys, we are right at time. Melisa, that was a great answer. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. It was extremely valuable. And folks, like I said, this will be available on demand, so you can rewatch it after. Visit Melisa's website. And thank you so much for everybody being here today.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.